Good evening. My Lady Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice and Justice of the Supreme Court. My Lords and my ladies and my lords, in summarizing the position of the 4 commissioners who are now respondents in this consolidated presidential petition, Lords, we want to make the following submissions. One, as a commission, it is the position of the 4 commissioners that they did what was within their mandate to deliver a free and fair election as required by the Constitution. But in their quest to do what is right, what is required of them, there are problems that have been set out in the respective affidavits. And my lords, the first issue that you would note that springs from these 4 affidavits by the 4 commissioners is a question of lack of transparency. On the day after the voting ended, and also predates the general elections. You'd note one thing that is common and that cuts through the 4 affidavits is that they were excluded from the process that was going on in terms of verification. And what is clear when you look at all these 4 affidavits is that yes, there was that process where they appeared to read results. These results, and they've said this under oath and has not been controverted, were the results that were being processed on the floor of the National Tallying Center. They were handwritten. And that's important because they were handwritten. They would come out and read them to the agents and to the nation so that for each and every constituency, and these results were per constituency, people would know that these results have been verified at the National Tallying Center. You would note that in this affidavit, for the first 2 days, from the 9th to the 12th, these results were being posted, or they were being aired in a screen that was available to the agents, the presidential agents, and to the media. That screen was paused or it went off. In all the affidavits, they said, and they requested, that this screen should be on so that as we go progressively verifying and tallying the results, anything we announce here can be confirmed by both the presidential agents and by the voters who voted. That request was declined. The question is why? Why did the chairman refuse to put on those results and to verify the numbers that were being read to the nation? The second question that you'll see that arises in terms of the process of verification and tallying, that has been covered by some of the parties that have submitted today. You'd note that when that process reached the tail end, the 27 constituencies that had not been announced had not been publicly confirmed to have been verified. And in fact, when you look at the affidavit of Commissioner Wanderi, he says he had taken a break because he had been there overnight. When he came back, the first expectation was that these results would be confirmed, they had been verified, and that they had been announced to all the agents. The chairman takes the position there was no constitutional requirement or he had no legal requirement to do that. No, he had. Because the Constitution requires transparency and accountability. That is the process that takes place at the National Tallying Center. It is not a perfunctory exercise. It is not a ceremony. It is a constitutional process. And why this is important is that the document that was given to the commissioners by Mr. Marjan, as confirmed by Mr. Chebukati, was not a Form 34C. That was being undertaken not by the commissioners, but members of staff in the back office of the chairman. The commissioners did not see Form 34C, did not verify it, and they did not approve it before it was generated. In fact, in all of the affidavits, they say they never saw the Form 34C. What was given was a 3-page document, and that document has a problem. That document appears in the vice chairman's affidavit and the other 3 commissioners' affidavits. What you note about that document, and that was generated by Mr. Marjan, as has been confirmed, and presented to the commissioners, is a summary of 47 counties. It does not have the results that are required to be confirmed and verified at the National Tallying Center of the 290 constituencies. Why is that important? Because at this point in time, before the Form 34C can be generated, these 7 commissioners, I'm talking to them as a commission, needed to verify that what we have announced before the nation and to the presidential agents these are the results that have been announced publicly, and this is what has been tabulated for each and every constituency, and these are the results garnered by each and every candidate. And on the basis of that, then a Form 34C is prepared. That 3-page document is not a Form 34C. That is a document that the chairman came with, or he was presented, and then he went and declared the result. That was unconstitutional because the Form 34C needs to precede the Form 34D in terms of the commissioners approving that document. And because that is their role, that is a constitutional role. In fact, we engage these commissioners, we invest the billions that we invest in the commission so that when this solemn exercise comes along, every 5 years, that process, they take it seriously and they do it in accordance with the law. And the third issue about transparency. The commissioners were not aware of how many voters, and that figure was not confirmed at the time this figure was being given to them. The figures, and you'd note about the different figures that have been given, and in fact, I was asked to highlight this. When you look at the affidavit of Mr. Sunkuli, sorry, let me start with the chairman, Commissioner Chebukati, at paragraph 30 of his affidavit, the one that he saw on the 26th of August. This is the one that has been prepared jointly by the firm of Gumbo and Company, my good friend. At paragraph 30, he gives the percentage, 64.6. In Mr. Sunkuli's affidavit of the same day, and I know that an explanation has been given, on the 26th of August, at paragraph 25, he says at the close of voting, that the turnout that had been reported in Kimskits was at 63.6%, and he gives the figures. Now, the commissioners needed to verify and confirm what the turnout was. And that required, and this is in public knowledge, and it has been confirmed by all the commissioners, that in a number of polling stations, the Kimskit failed, and in compliance with the law, they resorted to the printed manual register. The number of voters who voted without being biometrically verified had not been verified and confirmed by the commissioners. In fact, that information was never given to them. The number of voters who had been confirmed as having voted biometrically had not been given to the commissioners. So yes, they cannot change any of the results, but the process of verification and tallying and the constitutional process of determining who has attained the threshold is a joint process by all the commissioners. And that's where they come and say, what is the voter turnout? They confirm that process, because yes, they cannot change anything in the Form 34, even if they see glaring illegalities, they can note them. 2, that transparency required, then they confirm, because this Form 32As are not transmitted electronically. They are brought by this individual returning officers from the 290 constituencies. There was a possibility. There were some places where voters could not be identified because their biometrics had a problem, and they could not be, and then there was, and that was allowed by the Court of Appeal. The final resort was to resort to the register, the printed register, to confirm that these persons, because they had the IDs of were registered voters. That is also a solemn process, because then they confirm, out of all this, were there any other voters that were identified manually, and then that number is verified, so we can come to the determination whether the 50+1 had been attained. They were not allowed to do that. And they requested, it's not that because there was an oversight, they requested and the chairman declined. So this transparency at the National Tallying Center is critical, because as a commission, you have to come and defend the process from the Gazette notice that was issued in January of 2022 to the final declaration. And the fact that the chairman was stubborn is a question, as set out in these 4 affidavits, is that he has contempt not only for his fellow commissioners, but also for the voters, and also for the people of this republic, as well as the institutions, because that's exactly what he was told as the chairman, not him as a person, in Maina Kiai that the chairman of IEBC does not have that role singularly. That is a role vested in the commission. Failure to adhere to a decision that is binding on the commission and the chairman of the commission is contempt not only of the constitution, but of the institutions, of the judicial institutions that have said this over and over again. And let me go back to the lack of transparency in the process. When you look at the affidavit, which is the most detailed of the vice chairperson of the commission, there was lack of transparency regarding even when the ballot papers came to this country. The chairman calls it the vice chairperson the night before the ballot papers are to land here and tells, oh, you are aware that tomorrow we are getting ballot papers. The other commissioners were not aware. This is part of the critical process that was meant to be undertaken by the commission. So transparency is just not at the tallying center, it's about the whole process. Well, if you look at paragraph 8 of the vice chairman of the commission, Juliana Cherera, she says, when it came to the issues raised about the voter register that were being addressed in one of the petitions, serious issues had been raised by KPMG. And so that required prompt, because this process was already late, it required a plenary decision on how to address the shortcomings and the lack of integrity of the data in that voter register. The vice chair says they were excluded from that process by the chairperson. So if there was any problem with the voter register, it was meant to be addressed by the commissioners, because they take ownership of the voter register. They were excluded. He made the decision on how to implement the decision and even what to disclose to the public. So these are the processes we're saying. Transparency and accountability in the whole process, and Article 81 and 86, is just not about the final product that appears on the telly. It's about what the commissioners are meant to do. And lastly, when you look at the affidavit of Commissioner Justice Nyang'ai, if anyone was to be given access to the voter identification, the result transmission system, or the back end, the commissioners needed to know we are giving the following persons access and the following rights, so that if there's any query, they can answer on behalf of the commission. That information was kept away by the commissioners, from the commissioners. And in fact, the commissioner in charge of that process. Lack of accountability and lack of transparency. And then these 4 commissioners who are being vilified are expected to come and stand behind the chairman and take ownership of such a process that has so many questions, and then confirm that a person has been declared the president without following due process under the Constitution. They took an oath, and they have a responsibility and a constitutional obligation to the voters and to the people of Kenya not to take part in such a process, and that's what they did on the day of 15th. And that day of 15th is important because if it was the last day, there could have been an explanation as to why the chairman was in a hurry. There was one more extra day. Why was the chairman in a hurry while the choir was singing? The country was peaceful. He had one more day to ensure that the whole process was undertaken in a manner contemplated under the Constitution. And so, my ladies and my lords, we submit that these 4 commissioners, and although they have taken a position here and they've now been, they've been sued as respondents, had every right not to give a seal of approval to that process that was not verifiable, it was not accountable, and had not been undertaken in conformity with the Constitution. They respect the work that all the staff at the Commission had done, but they were betrayed by the chairman. Thank you, Chief Justice and judges of the Supreme Court.